Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. We are Indy investors talking Indy investing. So excited for this show today. We're going to break down I got the Real Talk group back with me today, and we're going to break down just the top 5 areas in Indy that we think are good for our strategy. So we're going to talk top 5 areas for wholesaling, top 5 areas for buy and hold, top 5 areas for fix and flip. So we're going to get in today with the guys, and with that, let's get on with the show. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. So excited to have Sterling and Dave back with me again today as we talk top 5 areas in Indy to invest in for our strategy that we are doing each and every day. So this is our list. This is what we think. There's no rhyme or reason to this. You can hold us to it. You can't hold us to it, but whatever you think you want to do. No, this is just some sound advice that we kind of came up with, list for our strategies that we think would work best right now of what's going on in Indy and stuff like that. So obviously there's some great areas in Indy throughout, some great neighborhoods to invest in. These are just our thoughts, so you can take it for what it is. If you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect with you of anything we talk about after the show. So Sterling, let's talk with you, man. Let's have you share first. So you're property manager, you're doing buy and hold, landlord, you're on your own and stuff like that. So when you think about your strategy of what you're doing each and every day, man, what are some of the top 5 areas that you came up with on your list for Indy investors today that are looking at that buy and hold strategy, man?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I could talk all day about this, so I'm going to try to be brief. All right. So one of the things that I found in our market right now is a valuation of the ARVs high and the rents are kind of staying the same. So that is just something that you got to keep in mind as you're investing in these, where certain neighborhoods that really are outpacing the rents. So what I'm looking at is ones that are a little bit more stable. So I broke it down to 2 categories. I broke it down to right now, very stable, really good to invest in right now, and you're going to get a pretty steady cash on cash or ROI on it. The second one that I broke it down to the last 2 are going to be properties that I feel like is the up and coming neighborhood that is really improving, still has a closer gap than some of these other neighborhoods when it comes to rent and value. But I think these are ones that are my main focus, that are the little flowers are 2 years ago. If you was in the market 2 years or 3 years ago, Little Flowers, that neighborhood, it's like, oh, anything in Little Flower, Brian's selling all day. So the number one, well, I don't want to rank them, but number one for me is Irvington. Irvington, of course, it has that home ownership, it's stable, and then the neighborhood itself just has a lot of great qualities as it's expanding more east as well as more south, I guess, a little bit. So second is Lawrence, Indiana. We talk about this one all the time, so this is no surprise. North of 46th Street, all that great stuff. I still think it's just so many great values in that area when it comes to buy and hold investing, specifically things that are north of 46, but I'm finding stuff that is, I can't think of the street now, but closer to the highway, basically. It seemed like a lot more properties are coming available.
Sterling, when you say Lawrence, are you meaning reference to Lawrence schools?
Yeah, so I think it's more the township of Lawrence, closer to the Fort Bend, but not in Fort Bend. So that neighborhood, that's Barlow, Patton, I love that one, but if you probably can't find much on there, so you have to go across the street to find the most value for your bang for your buck.
Yeah, those are the areas that I think that right there, like if you can get, Lawrence schools especially, you got some families that just want to move in there and stuff like that. And honestly, I have Lawrence on my list as well. So we'll talk about that when it comes to wholesaling and things like that, because I think there's opportunity there. But yeah, man, I think that's a great thing. And even kind of going back to Irvington, of like kind of people you got a lot of families moving in there that want to be in those areas because there's new things to do. That's where, there's new coffee shops and new things to go. So there's people that, when that things happen, just Irvington and Lawrence are great examples of that, where you see that cool little place that's popping up that people are visiting. They're going there. They're specifically going there for that. That's where those families are starting to go. So that's good areas, man.
I mean, home ownership is so important in the key of buy and hold.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to saturate it with just rental markets necessarily for the most stable buy and hold property. So what I was going to say with Lawrence is West of Franklin seems like that new area that you can kind of pick up for some value as well. And like everybody said, you're still in the school district of Lawrence. My third one is I hate putting it out there because I mean I think everybody knows about it, but it is this pocket where you can find some sleepers. Is Beech Grove. Beech Grove is a pretty solid rental area. It has a lot of great things that's going on in there. The school district is good. U of I is close over there. Like, it's so many things that you can kind of find value over there. So
Yeah.
in the
I think
house
that's if you
structure
just,
is good.
if anybody finds a house in Beach Grove, just buy it. Like, I don't care what your
Exactly.
strategy is, just go for it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So the two remaining ones, like I said, these are the new players the last year and a half that I find. One is not as surprising. Butler Targeted. I feel like that area is really expanding. I mean, you can even go over to Crown Hill because I think some of that growth is carrying over there. I think Crown Hill would be a little bit more of a beginning, but you could still get in there for lower end and find some burrs and things inside of the Crown Hill. But Butler Tarkington, um, you know, north of 42nd Street is solid. And now I find that even north of 40th Street is starting to get some improvement, which is a great sign for, some early investors that was into that neighborhood that's going to make, the upside.
Yeah, that area, the way you say that, just like you said, the area's expanded even to it. You have that, the certain pockets, if you get above 42nd Street, you're going to be super solid. You're going to know that. But then even closer to 38th Street, and you even mentioned Crown Hill coming across 38th Street there, that area is just expanding in general. So granted, that's not Butler Tarkington, but of just kind of everything that's going on there, it makes sense to get in there and, for buy and hold and stuff like that. So that's great. Yeah, good tip.
Yeah, this last neighborhood that I'm going to talk about is one that is somewhat of a I don't hear talked about a lot, in reference to, but I think it has a lot of great value. When I start looking at our portfolio, I have some of our highest performing properties sit in this neighborhood. And that neighborhood is Cumberland. Cumberland is just such a solid neighborhood. It's one of those places that I just think if you look at the growth of like McCordsville and those neighborhoods, Warren, Cumberland, you kind of find Cumberland. I just find that neighborhood, so yeah, that's my last and final one that I think people should know about.
You kind of went off the mark there. I wasn't expecting that one, so that was good. So I like that. That was a little unusual and stuff like that. So do you have a lot of investors that are investing out in Cumberland right now?
Very good.
I don't know, Dave. Is it me messing up now still? So yeah, so we
What did
apologize
you
for that little
let me
technical
just do it all over?
difficulties and stuff right here, but we'll try to keep this rolling and stuff like that. So Sterling, as you went off the kind of the mark right there with Cumberland, I wasn't expecting that and stuff. So what do you have a lot of investors that are out in Cumberland right now?
So we have a few. Cumberland territory is smaller because I think it stretches over a little bit, but I think it's just such a great hold investment area.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's one of those sleepers. If you can find territory there, I think you buy it.
Yeah, I like it. So I mean, I know kind of, yeah, we've doing a lot of deals in like Greenfield, so Cumberland, kind of that whole area over there and stuff like that. So I think that's awesome. Great tip, man. I like your list. Yeah, like if you have any questions, anything like that, feel free to reach out to me, Sterling, Dave, or anything like that on the buy and hold stuff. And now let's get into a little bit of Dave, man. What are some 5 areas that you think of around Indianapolis that are good to fix and flip right now, man?
Well, one of the top ones for me would be Irvington, with some caveat. It's we love Irvington as long as you don't have to put siding and windows in the house, because the association basically creates a lot of grief for you at that point, the historical society. So they're very on top of Irvington. So the more extensive the exterior work is, the harder it is to flip in Irvington and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So anything we do in Irvington right now, we got to have good windows. We've got to have, good siding, so we don't have to deal with the association. Or you can be just out. You can be Irvington, but just be outside their reach. So that's really a good neighborhood.
So when yes,
Go ahead.
Dave, when you're talking about like, kind of dealing with, basically the regulations stuff over there, when you're talking about the windows and siding, things like that, are they trying to expand? Like, is there any way that they can expand their area, the parameters they're able to put in that kind of stuff? Or is it like, hey, if you can get just right outside this area, you're going to be okay. You're still going to get the value, but how's that working?
You can go outside their parameter and be Irvington, and they don't have say.
Yeah.
And most of that has to do with the age of the house also.
Gotcha.
So they're not as concerned of anything built after, really 1955,
Okay.
1960. So when you get in that, they'll let you go back to what you originally had. Yeah. And which is stuff that we can deal with.
Yeah.
There's some great areas around 10th and Emerson that is Irvington, but doesn't have the reach of the Historical Society.
Right.
So you just have to pick in there. Emerson Heights is another good neighborhood that's reference Irvington, but you don't necessarily have to deal with some of the stuff that you have to deal with in some of the other areas.
Yeah, for sure.
Another area I like a lot is Beech Grove. Sterling, like you said, we'll try to do anything in Beech Grove that makes sense. And they always sell for big dollars. You can sell. Beech Grove today will fetch on a per square foot basis what Fountain Square did a couple years ago. So you can sell a 1,000 square foot bungalow in the 160, 170 a foot range in Beech Grove, done really nice, and they sell very quickly. The last 3 or 4 we've had in Beech Grove have been 2 or 3 day sales. Nice. At price or over asking. So a third area that I have is again ticking on is Lawrence Schools area in general. We're doing a couple bigger ones. We're finding some stuff in some of the areas like Beam Reach, Guys, some of those areas, maybe a little bit higher in flips, but you can now get an aggressive market for them, because any areas you go that's higher in that you can compete against new construction, we really like. For instance, in Beam Reach and Lawrence, Masthead, some of those neighborhoods, we can compete against new construction on it. With an established type neighborhood, we can be almost on a total ranch redone, really nice, a great neighborhood. We can be $50,000 to $80,000 what under cost of new would be, and it's even hard to find. So we really like those neighborhoods. A couple of the areas next that it's a little off the beaten path that I've done in the past, and the reason we're doing this is we're looking real strong at neighborhoods where we can bring a flip property to the market at under $90,000, under $100,000. And what we're looking at, which we think is just a great strategy right now, is we just did a house on North Euclid Street, and it's what we liked about it. That whole area is relatively clean. It's high rental percentage, which we don't like, but we're fitting a need for the tenants in those neighborhoods that want to move up. So we can redo a 800 square foot house in those. We can buy that house for $25,000 or $30,000, and we can spend $15,000 or $20,000 in it and sell it for $80,000. And what we like about that model is, if an $80,000 buyer buys that house and puts 3.5% down, their payment with taxes and insurance is going to be $450 to live in a house, when the neighbor right next door is renting that same house for $750 a month.
Yeah, and you're talking about north of 16th.
Huh?
And
Yeah,
you're
I'm
talking
talking
about north of 16th, right?
north of 16th, south of 21st. And there's just a tremendous amount of product in there. And what I like about it is that it's what I call ease of entry. You're not going to have a lot of money for a first time investor or somebody wanting to do that doesn't have a lot of capital. You know, they can be all in one of these houses for $50,000. And anything you put on the market, it's going to sell for 79.9, maybe higher.
Yeah, and how, you were showing me pictures of that one yesterday, Dave. How quick were you guys in and out of that one that you just did?
We were in and out of that house in 3 weeks.
Yeah. So, and that's awesome. I think that's such a great strategy of, this quick little projects like that you can do, because I mean, that's what a lot of turnkey providers have provided for their tenants over the last few years here in Indy and stuff like that. And this is nothing against the turnkey providers. There are some that are doing it really well and stuff like that. But this looks like what Dave showed me yesterday is a little, higher quality stuff. But just like you said, usually people around Indy they're going to have to rent that property right there like that. But if you're able to buy it, you're in under $60,000, you have the opportunity to sell that on owner financing for 80, 85, somewhere around there. And then it's basically like you are collecting that interest and stuff like that. So giving those people the opportunity to be homeowners versus tenants, I think is a great opportunity and a great strategy with this.
Well, and you also will find people that will refinance the house
Mm-hmm.
and buy it for even a lesser amount from a payment standpoint.
Yeah.
But and the beauty of it is there's all kinds of these neighborhoods all over Indy. And what I would just caution new investors to do when they're buying these kinds of properties is don't get into a house that you have to reinvent the wheel. You want it to be cosmetically challenged and not structurally challenged.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't like about some of the areas over Butler Tarkington is a lot of those houses can be structurally challenged. It's hard to really get a good footprint in that house without spending a lot of money on a flip. So that's why we stay away from there.
That neighborhood would be good for the burr.
Absolutely.
Like,
I mean,
mm-hmm.
It's so easy for the burr, and you'll burr it out and have equity.
Yeah.
Have really solid equity on that particular house. So the other area that I like is that and I'll blanket Washington Township. And we have flips in Washington Township that's around 200, and we have them all the way up to 600. So you can go into those neighborhoods and get value, especially if you bump up and get into Washington Township schools. Anything in Washington Township schools sells at a pretty quick pace. So we like all of Washington Township in regards to that. And the last one is not an area, but it's a type of product that I think is overlooked by a lot of investors is most condos in Indianapolis are going to be good flip opportunities. So, and it's amazing because the beauty with flips is that you don't have to deal with the outside of the house on it. So we can be very quickly in and out of these houses. And if the homeowners association is not real strong, then you can do some exterior work to the house too and make your house stand out. The only thing I would caution people on condos is, if you're buying them to possibly hold them and rent them, you just got to make sure your HOA is going to allow you to do that.
Yeah, that's it, man. Right there with that. And a lot of the HOAs sometimes too, they have like a certain percentage that they do. So they might say like, oh yeah, we can accept rentals, but they don't know what their, make sure they know what their percentage is. So they might say, oh, we can only have 20% rentals in this area and stuff. So just making sure you're checking on those things. But I agree with you, man, on just I think for any of our strategies that condos are kind of an overlooked thing. So we've done, in the past, we would just kind of bypass condos. And I think even maybe just talking to you on the radio show, we're like, yeah, it might be a good opportunity for us to look at. And I think we've done, 5 or 6 just this year that have been really good properties for us to just, buy and turn over to an investor.
and almost all areas of the condos is going to work. I mean, there's some very lower end condos in Lawrence Township that you want to stay away from. But I know Amy and New Paradox did a nice flip
Yep.
in one of them at 56 in Franklin. And that's an area a year and a half ago we would have just totally bypassed. We
Right.
wouldn't even consider that neighborhood, where now we actively look and would love that neighborhood to flip in. And it's a price point. It's that under 100
Yep.
price point that really that is going to attract the buyers, and they'll, the $100,000 and under will accept some stuff that in the past they wouldn't accept, as far as location, where the house is at. As long as it's rehabbed properly, there's going to be any nice rehab house in about any area, and no cutting corners is going to have a demand.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I appreciate your list. I think you did a great job with it. So really solid areas right there to fix and flip, man. So awesome job there. So getting into my list of just like kind of top 5 areas that I kind of look to, hey, if you are a wholesaler out there, or really if you are looking for, if you're even a buy and hold investor or fix and flipper, and you're doing some direct marketing of your own, some areas that you can possibly look into, or areas that you can, hey, my bird dog, you need to go here, or my wholesaler, check out these areas, things like that. So my list of my first one on my list, these in no particular order or anything. First one just is West Indy. I love me some West Indy right now. Just kind of over in those areas. I think you can definitely pick up some properties that you can kind of do a little bit of everything with from those strategies. But we're not talking West Indy. I'm talking about just kind of, just west of the downtown, west of the river. When you have Stringtown, Hawthorne, even south of 70, Rhodius Park area and things like that. I think there's some pretty good opportunity there. You can still getting properties under contract at a low price point, and being able to turn those over to investors. I think a lot of investors are looking for that area that they know that, I can buy and hold over there. If you get closer to Stringtown, closer to the zoo and stuff like that, there is some flip opportunities over there. There's some good developments in Hawthorne that are going on. So checking out those areas, I think not bypassing those that a lot of people have in the past, just because, there are some rough areas over there, but there's some really good opportunity over there as well. So my next one on my list that I know, we all had actually was Lawrence. So I think it's the one that made all 3 of our lists. Maybe we should have collaborated a little bit before these together, but the Lawrence area, I think there's just, I put it on here because people want to be in Lawrence school. So whether you are buy and hold or even doing some fix and flip, I think Lawrence is solid for that, because people want to be, Lawrence has a really good school district and the price point's perfect for that. But also I put it on my list because I think there's some real opportunity with what's coming up. Just the way that with the forbearance and people not being able to the possible foreclosures that are going to happen because people aren't going to be able to pay their mortgage because of COVID and because of losing the jobs. I think Lawrence is going to be one of those areas that is going to provide a lot of opportunity, where some of those things might come up and you might be able to help some people that are in a situation that they need to get out of, and you can get in there at a good price point to help them out, and that your investors will kind of scoop up those properties. So I kind of put that on there for that, because I thought that was a solid area that you'd be able to kind of basically look for that opportunity that's coming up. So next area on my list is just really kind of anything like southeast of Fountain Square. So I know Fountain Square, Bates Hendricks, it's just, they're very overblown. You got to make sure you get the right property in those areas. But southeast of there, so you got the Bean Creek around Sarashang Golf Course, even up into kind of the Barrington, the Dog Patch areas, things like that. There's some really good opportunity there where you can pick up some solid properties at good price points to be able to turn over to your investors. Especially buy and hold investors are really excited about that area right now. A lot of people want to get in there. So just kind of north of that Beach Grove area, it's solid. I think there's some real opportunity there. Sterling, I kind of ask you, man, just kind of, have you seen like an uptick of your buy and hold investors like wanting to get into Bean Creek? It seems to be like a really, popular area that people will it's kind of the buzzword almost a little bit in some of the groups and things.
Absolutely, we have. It's a reason why I didn't put it, just because I feel like it's already talked about so much.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's a solid neighborhood. I think, it has some value. But for me, I always look for things that have attractions. And Bean Creek lacks a little bit of that attraction for me. Like, what is the commerce in the neighborhood? What are the things that are going to keep driving the prices and values up, right? So right now, it seems like a lot of forced appreciation, which kind of scares me in ways. But I think it's a great, solid rental neighborhood. I think, but the only reason I didn't put it on my list is that I feel like people just talk about it so much.
People do talk about it. I just think it's one of those things of just like, I guess it was me like yesterday, even researching this, like just hearing, you pop in, you put Indian in and like, hey, what neighborhoods and things like that. It's still so far heavy on Fountain Square, Bates Hendricks and stuff like that. I'm like, come on, like get outside of that a little bit. But I like it because in between those areas, the Fountain Square, Bates Hendricks, Garfield Park, those areas like that. And then you have, Beech Grove right below it, just finding something in kind of in that middle right in there. And then plus also I, golf the Sheriff Golf Course a couple of times. Love that course. So kind of cool down in there. So next one on my list that I kind of put on here is Riverside. So I didn't want to put it on here. I don't want to like Riverside, but I like it. I can't help it. If you are able to, kind of get a little, if you can get left of the creek that runs through Riverside, kind of in between the creek and in between the river, right around there, especially if you can get south of Birdsdale Parkway. Those are areas that people are doing some pretty cool things in right now. You're going to be able to get in at super low price point. Like you can't buy properties over there. You can't buy them at like, $40,000, $50,000. If you're getting these under contract as a wholesaler, you need to be around $20,000, low 20s, 25, stuff like that. But it is possible to be able to get properties under contract at a very low price point and then be able to get them to your investors because they're going to be able to do some things with it. So we're working on two deals right now, just exactly on Riverside Drive over there. So great area. I think there's some real opportunity there. There are definitely some areas that you want to stay away from and things like that. But like I said, if you can get left of the creek or west of the creek and then south of even Birdsdale Parkway, those are some areas that you can definitely hit up and some real opportunity there. Is because it's there. So Dave, have you done any flips or anything over there? Have you looked into that at all?
No, we're fortunate enough to find some things where my term is pioneer. I really don't want to be a pioneer going into those neighborhoods. And so we've kind of stayed away from them. It's like St. Clair Place. It's, there's a proven market there.
Yeah.
There's a proven market at Riverside. But as long as you can, I think there's still C areas at best.
Yeah.
So if I can stay and be in A areas as a first preference, what I like about those neighborhoods is the point of entry for a new flipper.
Mm-hmm.
And there again, you can rehab them and get a fair profit out of the house.
Yep.
So one of the areas that we haven't touched on too, we haven't been there, and it's just a little our geographic area, is Anderson. Anderson creates a lot of opportunity for people.
I think Anderson is one of the most like it's a polar of area of where people either like it or they hate it and like, oh yeah.
Well, I agree, and I talked to two different flippers yesterday, and they both were looking for more product in Anderson, and they've done really well in Anderson.
Yeah.
As far as the price, the entry is good. And they'll still sell, and they'll sell the Burr strategy very easily.
Yep. I remember when we were doing the neighborhood map and things like that for Anderson, like the number one thing that came up was like 20 per, like it was 1 out of 15 people will either be raped or murdered in Anderson. I was like, that is such a high statistic for such a small geographic area.
Yeah. So it's definitely just like
mine have got better.
So yeah, it's one of those things that just like kind of like like the Riverside, I'd put Anderson kind of in that same thing. And just make sure you're driving the area and make sure that you're not just going by like, oh, Google View looks like this, or this is what I think it looks like on a map or anything. Make sure you actually drive the streets and make sure it's this is what my investor's looking for. So this is what this looks like what they need. So make sure it's that kind of area.
You talk about areas. You literally can throw in all the peripheral areas. You got Fortville, McCordsville, you've got Sheridan, you've got Pendleton, you've got LaPel, and Franklin, Greenfield, Maxwell. They're all decent neighborhoods to flip in.
Yeah, 100%. So my last area that I picked, and I took some liberties with this one, I just put anything outside the loop. So
Yeah.
kind of just even talking about that. So I just said, man, it's things are flying off the shelf right now. We can't, if we get something outside the loop, we're selling it like, super quick. And there's just a lot of opportunities available. So I'm kind of amazed at the amount of properties that come across our plate that are in Fishers, in Noblesville, things like that right now. We've done a few in Franklin, Greenfield, Brownsburg. Those areas right now, there are a lot of opportunities there. I kind of brought it up with, the Lawrence earlier, where there's people that are going to necessarily not be able to afford their mortgage. You're going to need some help. They're going to be looking for some answers, and you can provide that solution for what their problem is, as a wholesaler, as, just an investor in general, if you're looking to get properties direct from the sellers. So I just kind of put that on there. Just anything outside the loop right now, it's just hot. The market, the inventory is so low that I think anything in those areas are it's going to weigh what you want to look at. So if there's a possibility there, get it under contract, do your thing, and make sure you can push it out to your investors. Because I think there's a lot of opportunity when we talk about just outside the loop, even the littler, neighborhoods like the Lapel and the things like that. You maybe not, hey, want to do Pendleton. We just did a deal in there. It was the easiest thing to sell. It just right when we got it sold, no doubt about it. We'll make, $20,000 on it. No problem. So, so that's my list. Anything else that you guys want to kind of throw out there, or just any neighborhoods that we didn't talk about? They're like, hey, we didn't mention this, but think about this right now.
Yeah, I would say for me, on non-single family, but on like some multifamily level, to throw out there like Evansville. It has a lot of great opportunities up there right now that I'm seeing come across my desk. I'm seeing properties that's close by the casino too, that is a growing geographic area as well. So I know it's kind of far from Indy, but something to think about.
Yeah, I think you, even just your first point you brought up of even just like kind of the multifamily stuff. So even just the duplexes, triplexes, and things like that, I feel like those are just super hot, just all around Indianapolis and in those areas that you're talking about, whether it's Evansville or even Terre Haute, or out by the casino and things like that. So I think that any kind of multifamily more than a single family is a pretty hot property right now.
So how far were, like your local investors, Sterling?
Yep.
How far geographically will they go out of Indianapolis for multifamily?
For multifamily, they'll cover the state. Like for single family, it's mostly central. But for multifamily, if you can find the right deal, I think just numerically it makes sense.
Yeah. Now, when you say they'll do state, will they do like Gary?
They would do the region if it makes sense.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would do because most true multifamily people are more region based. St. Louis, then I'll do Indy, and then I'll do Ohio.
Yeah.
It's more the region than it is, because it's just not enough inventory to focus on a small part of like Indy. So we go to Newcastle, we go to the region, we go to Evansville, just to be able to find a deal 10 plus or more.
So awesome. Dave, any last little words of wisdom or anything, or any neighborhoods you want to point out before we get off here?
No, I mean, Sterling touched on a little bit. Little Flower is now what I call expanding. A year ago, I wouldn't have liked streets like Denny and Colorado and some of those streets to be considered Little Flower, where now they present a really good entry position for investors.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of nice one-bedroom aside doubles that do really well rent-wise. You can be all in those units for $70, and they're going to rent for $600 aside. So anytime you have that kind of income in an area that's improving daily, they're going to be, that unit in 3 or 4 years will be worth $99.9.
Yep.
So there's great growth opportunities in those kinds of neighborhoods.
Awesome. I like it. Well, thank you so much for joining me, fellas. I thought we put some great lists together. Let us know what you think of them. Let us know, if you have any, hey, you guys, what about this area? What about that? We'd love to answer any of those questions or help you out in any way we can. So feel free to reach out, Brian@simplewholesaling.com, or just reach out to each one of us on Facebook if you need to. You can hear more about us on the Indy Investor Pod coming forward on some other episodes that we're doing. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover, reach out. We'd love to do that. And with that, thank you very much. And we will see you on the next episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Take care.
Yep.